Imagine a band so powerful, so untamable on stage that they actually refused to record a live album. They believed no vinyl record could ever capture the raw, bone-shaking energy of their performance. But in August 1972, Deep Purple landed in Japan for the first time, and what happened over 3 nights in Osaka and Tokyo didn't just change the band's mind, it changed rock history forever. This is the story of Made in Japan, the accidental masterpiece that became the gold standard for every live rock album that followed. And here's the twist. The band almost buried it before anyone ever heard a single note. Before I continue, let me show you the vinyl record that I have. I found this used in a street fair in Mexico City. So here's the vinyl, and it's one of the early presses. It's not like the best condition in the world, but the inside is actually, the gatefold is pretty messed up, has a little bit of damage, but on a positive note, the vinyls themselves are protected in the sleeve, so they sound very good. So this one has the 2 records. I think it's one of the earlier presses. A lot of these I find in Mexico City are in Spanish. This has a few words in Spanish, and the song titles are bilingual in English and Spanish. So I'm pretty sure this was pressed. This is from Capital EMI, but I think it was pressed here in Mexico. So that's vinyl. And let me continue with the story because it's actually very interesting. There's a lot going on. So let's continue. By 1972, the Mark II lineup of Deep Purple in Gillan, Ritchie, Blackmore, Roger Glover, John Lord, and Ian Pace was a global juggernaut. They were touring relentlessly, honing a style that had moved away from the psychedelic roots into the heavy improvisational territory that would soon be classified as heavy metal. But something the greatest hits version of the story often glosses over, these 5 men were not exactly getting along. The creative tension between the mercurial Ritchie Blackmore and the wildly expressive Ian Gillan was already approaching a boiling point. Ego clashes, exhaustion, and creative disagreements simmered just beneath the surface. This raises a fascinating question. How do you make something this perfect when you can barely stand the people you're making it with? Made in Japan may be the greatest argument in rock history, that friction, not harmony, is sometimes the real genius of making a great record. Despite their commercial success, the band was being robbed in broad daylight. Fans were so desperate for a taste of their live show that illegal recordings, most notoriously one known as H-Bomb, were flying off black market shelves across Europe and Japan. Deep Purple's Japanese record label saw the situation clearly. If an official live album didn't exist, the bootleggers would fill the void indefinitely. They proposed a live album to commemorate the band's first Japanese tour. The band was skeptical to the point of outright suspicion. Bassist Roger Glover later admitted they thought the recording equipment that they were given looked very rotten, but here's what makes the story so delicious. Rather than walk away, the band issued 3 non-negotiable demands. They choose the recording gear, their trusted engineer Martin Birch would run the sessions, and most importantly, they had absolute veto power over whether the tapes would ever see the light of day. In other words, Deep Purple agreed to make a live album on the condition that they might never release it. So think about that for a moment. The Japan tour was originally scheduled for May 1972, but it was pushed back to August. At the time, this felt like a frustrating logistical setback. In hindsight, it was a stroke of pure luck. Those extra months sent the band back out on the road across the United States, where they relentlessly road tested new material from Machine Head, the album that contained Highway Star, Smoke on the Water, and Space Truckin'. By the time they finally touched down in Japan, the songs weren't just polished, they were detonators. Deep Purple took the stage at Festival Hall in Osaka, and then at the legendary Budokan in Tokyo. They were a well-oiled machine operating at the absolute peak of their powers. The question lingering over those 3 August nights, would the tapes actually capture it? The recording itself was startlingly, almost defiantly authentic. Unlike many live albums of the era that were quite rebuilt in the studio, sweetened, repaired, overdubbed, and something more presentable, Roger Glover has famously assured fans that Made in Japan is absolutely live with no overdubs. What you hear on this record is precisely what 10,000 Japanese fans heard with their own ears. Made in Japan is a double album that captures, in real time, the ferocity and looseness that made Deep Purple studio recordings seem almost timid by comparison. Here's a track-by-track look at what made each performance so extraordinary. Highway Star launches the album like a dragster off the line, an introductory vamp before the band explodes in full gear. Blackmore's neoclassical guitar solo, John Lord's distorted Hammond organ roar in competition with each other, laying down a marker in the first 10 minutes. It's not a normal night. And you've not been here. Child in Times, where Ian Gillan's vocal range becomes something almost inhuman. From a haunting, barely there whisper, he builds across 10 minutes to those legendary screams, a masterclass in dynamic tension that leaves audiences wondering how one set of lungs could possibly do that. Smoke on the Water and the classic guitar riff was recorded in Osaka, and this version became a top 5 hit in its own right. The studio original is iconic, but the live version has grit, muscle, and the unmistakable electricity of a crowd that already knows every note before it lands. The mule gave Ian Pace the spotlight, and he used it. His drum solo is not a technical exercise, but a rhythmic conversation. Pace holding the entire audience's attention, armed with nothing but sticks and skins. Strange Kind of Woman is arguably the most playful track on the record. Gillan and Blackmore engaged in a call and response duel, vocals versus guitar, that is spontaneous, unpredictable, and entirely unrepeatable. You can actually hear the band discovering what they're doing and doing it as they do it. Lazy lets John Lord step forward, his organ work taking the band through a sprawling blues-inflected jam that reveals the deep roots underneath all the noise. Space Truckin' is the closer, the grand finale, and the most audacious piece of music on the record. Clocking in at nearly 20 minutes on the original release, it's Deep Purple, untethered, a galactic, almost delirious improvisation that pushes hard rock into territory it had never visited before. It ends not with a tidy resolution, but with the sound of a band that genuinely cannot stop. You get the sense that if the venue hadn't had a curfew, they might still be playing it. Initially, the plan remained cautious, a release in Japan only, under the title Live in Japan, but when engineer Martin Birch brought the tapes back to London and the band finally listened, the calculus changed instantly. The quality was undeniable, the performances were not merely good, they were definitive. A worldwide release became not just an option, but an inevitability. Released in late 1972 and into 1973, Made in Japan became a massive commercial success, particularly in the United States, where it cracked the top 20. But its commercial numbers don't tell the real story. Made in Japan broke an unspoken rule. Before, the live album was largely treated as a souvenir, a product for the already converted, something you bought after seeing a band because you wished you could remember the night before clearly. It was not supposed to be a definitive artistic statement. Deep Purple's album changed that assumption permanently. It proved that a live recording could be more honest, more powerful, and more revealing of the band's true nature than any studio work. The genre of heavy metal, which was still finding its language and its mythology in the early 70s, suddenly had a document, a proof of concept. This is what it sounds like, and this is when it's real. This is what you're trying to achieve. Critics and fans have cited Made in Japan ever since as the archetypal hard rock double live album. A 2012 Rolling Stone readers poll placed it 6th on the all-time list of greatest live albums. Publications like Kerrang and Q have constantly returned it across decades. 50 years on, it still sounds urgent. Now, in August 2025, slightly belated, marking 53 years since those original August 1972 performances, Deep Purple released a comprehensive 50th anniversary edition of Made in Japan, and it's a genuine event for anyone who cares about the record. I don't actually have this edition, but I'll talk about it and I'll show some images of it. The centerpiece is a brand new stereo remix of the original 7-track album by acclaimed producer Steven Wilson, who also mixed the material in an immersive Dolby Atmos and 5.1 surround sound, a first for this release. For listeners who've only ever experienced the album through older pressings, The Wilson remix reportedly opens up the soundstage in ways that recontextualize performances you thought you knew by heart. The edition also includes complete recordings from all three nights: Osaka on August 15th and 16th, Tokyo on August 17th, newly remixed by Richard Digby Smith. Perhaps most intriguingly, a fifth CD collects all 6 encore performances for the first time, including Black Knight, Speed King, and Lucille, alongside rare single edits, including a Mexican edit of Space Truckin' that almost no one has ever heard. The full deluxe package spreads across 10 vinyl records and a 60-page booklet with updated liner notes and a replica tour poster, more accessible formats, a 5 CD Blu-ray set, and a 2 LP gatefold make the Wilson remix available to listeners at different price points, and the remix streaming is on all major platforms. That's what I want to say. Let me know in the comments what your favorite track is from the album, and drop a comment if you enjoyed this deep dive. Check out the Deep Purple playlist for more stories behind the music and legendary performances. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.